So for today, we'll be looking at the Surfer software for mapping, and I just want to introduce Surfer a little bit. Uh, Surfer has been around for quite some time, and when I arrived in IMS, this is one of the first software that was taught to us, the graduate students. And compared to other mapping software, this is very user-friendly as compared to QGIS. That's why I decided to discuss this first kay mas dali siya. And ayun, and its interface. So you can go to their website, goldensoftware.com, and look for the product Surfer. And the, s- the company Golden Software actually has a lot of products for mapping, graph, for graph making, and others. I haven't really checked on the Stratter and the Voxler. Well, I mainly use the Surfer software. And in the future, if you are planning to buy Surfer, if you're planning to buy the license, I have good news for you. It's only $999 per user. So,
Priceless.
wow. Ito yung funny priceless. Great for companies who need a tailor-made solution. Okay. So, ito, if you're willing to split it to several other groups, then you can share the $2,000. Also, there is I think this is a new service that they're offering. So there's a university. Hopefully, Suleiman will buy this software because it's very useful, not only for the for the marine and environmental sciences, but it's actually this has a lot of application too, in terms of engineering. Even businesses can use the software. They're planning to map out, target markets and whatnot. But in environmental science, we mainly use Surfer for mapping habitats, mapping substrate cover, mapping out mga biotic and abiotic factors. So, for example, pollution levels. So, we are able to pollution levels, heavy metals, microplastics. We can definitely use this. And there's a parang promo nila na $50 per year. So $50, what's that? Almost 3,000 pesos a year, which is not bad if you're planning to invest in something. Maybe just get a 1 year license, then do your thesis or do whatever that needs to be done in a year. Then you can definitely make the most out of it. So, and for as of now, we'll be dealing with we'll be using a cracked version of the Surfer. And since this lesson is recorded, I am in no way, shape, or form condoning the use of illegal and pirated software. This is mainly for educational purposes. As soon as you open your Surfer software, oh, close. No. So it's gonna give you this interface. So at first glance, it's going to be parang unsa ni? Uh, it pretty much looks like random parang Photoshop or something na software that you really don't have any that you might have difficulty in understanding and whatnot. Pero it's actually this area with the parang ano ba, ba't di ako maka-zoom? With the blank rectangle or the blank space here, it's actually your work area or your plot area. So this is where the graphs or the maps will actually take shape. On the left-hand side, it's labeled Object Manager. So this will fill up as soon as you put in the maps. So later, you'll see that it'll give you an object or the identity of certain items like the y-axis, the x-axis, the map itself, and so on. And Property Manager, this is mostly for the properties or the settings that's going to be shown once you select an item or the object here in the workspace or here. Okay, and you have the toolbar here, which gives you a wide array of tools, but we're going to be focusing on only a few, which is this one here. The new base map, new contour map, post map, new image map, and so on. So the first thing that you want to do is click here with the new worksheet. Okay, so it's going to give you, once you click on it, it's going to give you a spreadsheet type of interface where there's the you have the columns here labeled A to Z, and you have the rows labeled 1 to infinity. And as you notice that there is an X, Y, and Z over here beside the A, B, and C. So these are actually the data points that you will be using. In the older versions of Surfer, you have to manually input the XYZ here. But in the newer versions, in the versions that I sent you guys, and in my version, you can actually select it in the dialog that would appear later. So earlier I sent you a data set. So this is a sample data set. Actually, this is a data set gathered by one of the undergraduate students or alumni of the bio department when they asked me to make their map. And I might as well use this as a sample for you guys to practice on and to make maps with. As you can see, this let me zoom in a little bit. Ayaw mag-zoom in. And as you can see, this is actually encoded rather neatly. So you have the columns with transects, so transects 1 to 5, the quadrats, and you have the coordinates here, the latitude and longitude in decimal degrees. So it's just, there are no fancy the apostrophes and the quotation marks and no letters. It's just pure number. And you have your Z values here. So you can select from the pH, the biomass, Seeger's cover, uh, the phosphate analysis in the water, phosphate analysis in the soil, and ammonia analysis in both water and soil samples. So there's a lot of variables that you can play with. Okay. So first, let's start off with the salinity. Let's say we want to map the salinity of the area. So written here, this is from Aganan. So Aganan is the area beyond the airport or the airport runway. So just across the runway. So you can actually just copy and you paste it here. Okay. So this pretty much works like a Excel spreadsheet. So you can copy and paste the values or the columns here, and you can do your editing or your final adjustments in the area here. Or alternatively, you can actually open up the Excel files directly from the Surfer software. Personally, I just like to copy and paste them because I don't want to have multiple file formats of basically the same file. Uh, and it's gonna be a little bit confusing in the long run, especially if you're dealing with if you're making a lot of maps and a lot of uh, a lot of file formats and a lot of worksheets would be troublesome for you in the long run. Okay. So after you put in or pasted the values, you go back to the plot here. And then the next thing would be to look for the toolbar here and select grid. So grid, Grid, and you select the data. Okay, so it's going to open up the dialog of where to open the data. Since you have a spreadsheet already available here, open in the Surfer software, it's going to give you the option of selecting the open spreadsheet already. And you click on it, and you press or click on open. Then it's going to give you another dialog of what grid data you would like to input. So for the X, I want it to be the longitude, and for the Y, I want it to be the latitude. So remember, you have to make sure that the longitude, the values of the longitude coordinate are in the X column, and the values for the latitude is within the Y column in the spreadsheet. Or easily, if you didn't co- if you didn't arrange it as such, you can actually select it from the drop box there, and it's going to give you all the options, including the Z column. Okay, so the X and Y are the spatial coordinates or the spatial data. So that's where we want to put the coordinates. As for the Z column, that is the variable that we are trying to look at. So in this case, it's salinity. And uh, before clicking on OK, you should click this icon, the folder icon here, and change file name. In this case, since we are looking at salinity, just gonna type in salinity sample and press save, and it should be okay. So you can turn off the grid report. The grid report is just the statistical analysis done on your values here, or you can leave it on. In my case, I'm gonna leave it on since I want to show you guys what would happen if I turn it on, if I leave it on. So after clicking, it's gonna give you another dialog where the grid report is. So this is actually just statistics, which you probably really won't understand because I don't understand it. A lot of the times, I really don't understand it. That's why I turn off the grid report and I just close it and I don't save it at all. Okay. So now we've actually made the grid file. Any questions? Are you guys able to follow?
Yes.
Ay, wait, question. Na-experience na ba ninyo ang Surfer? The second years?
Wala pa kuya.
Wala pa?
Papa.
Ayun. So this is actually this is better if ma-discuss nato unta face to face katong mag hands-on ta ani para troubleshooting and everything, but ayun. Unfortunately, COVID again. So I'm recording this so you guys can go back to the video and follow the instructions. Okay. So now we're done with the grid report. So what's next? So the next part is actually just making the map. So remember this, the new base map, the new contour map, and the new post map. So I'm gonna discuss this one by one. So the base map is actually just the parang background layer of your map. So if you downloaded the base maps that I gave you in the chat, it's actually just the files pertaining to the shape of Negros Oriental. Okay, so those are the base maps. So that's basically the canvas or the background for your future maps. And the contour maps are the ones that are important. So the contour maps actually give you the range and the limits, the minimums and maximums of your values in the z-axis. And as for here, the post map are basically they're just the coordinates where you took or where you mark the your GPS. So let's start with the new contour map. Okay, so after selecting the icon here for the contour map, it's going to pop up a dialog asking where you find the grid file. So again, we've done the grid file earlier, and we want the salinity sample. You click on it, and you press enter. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. So it's gonna give you something like this. Center. Yeah. So at first glance, it looks like a bunch of scribbles. Parang basically abstract art. So the fun part comes when you're trying to edit this one. Okay. So, and you'll be able to see the values that you already have in the z-axis here, the salinity. Okay. So you click on this and remember the properties window. Oh, let me just, yeah, properties. So once you click on the certain item, it's going to show you the properties of that object on the workspace. So you can actually edit everything here. So from the general, if you want to have a smooth line, you can do so. So if you want to high and excuse me, and really doesn't change anything aside from the fact unless you have a lot several thousands of lines here, then smoothing would actually matter. But since it's only a couple of probably less than 50 lines here, so it's not really gonna matter. And as for the levels, wait, as for the levels, you can actually select here the level method. It's on simple, but we want it in advanced. So we select advanced, and it's going to give you this option for the contour levels, and you want to uh, edit the levels. But before that, you have to click on the fill contours. So click on it, and it's gonna give you this. It's gonna add color to your map or to your contour map, and then you want the color scale. So click on it. So meaning the darker areas have the value of 1 salinity, or the salinity is 1, and the areas with the lighter color have a value of 4.2. Okay? So, but this in itself is a ugly map, so to speak. So you can actually edit this, and you can change, as you can see here in the center, you can change the colors of your fill. So, or the colors of your map. So you don't want to click on it one by one. You just click the tab here that says fill, and you click the foreground color. Okay. So again, the black color is for the minimum, so the value of 1, and the white one is 4.2. So can you give me a color that would best represent salinity?
Yellow.
Yellow. Okay. So we want the value for the highest salinity to be yellow. Okay. For zero salinity, we stick to black or white, or what color? Anybody from the group? Take a,
Right.
take a
Right.
color, any color. Okay, white. Okay. Ba? And also, you can actually add several other levels here. Okay, if you click on, eto, diba? There's a bar that shows the color. Click anywhere there, and you can actually add a color. So this is 1 to 4.2. So we want it somewhere in the middle. Guba na jud ako mouse. Wait, let me change mouse. Mice. Saan yun? Ayun. Okay. So that's roughly center. Okay, so you can actually add another color. So let's say we want it to be brown. Then you can actually play around with the map or the scales, and you can add whatever color that you want. So green, then for slightly, maybe we want it purple. It's not gonna look pretty, but it should work. So okay, then you select okay, then it's going to change. So areas with the white color have a salinity of 1, and areas with the green have this range from 1.2 to 2.2, and as soon as it starts to get a little brownish, then again it's going to be 2.4 to 2.8. Then the ones in the yellow have the highest, and so on. So you can actually play around with this. You can use just two colors, being white and yellow. So it's going to give you the same effect. So let's say let's delete, delete. Okay. So it's still gonna give you a rough idea, but adding several colors within the scale between your levels will actually give you parang more accurate representation of your maps. So in this case, especially when you're printing your maps. So let's say you're printing, it's part of your thesis, you're trying to map out the seagrass cover of Bantayan or of Palawan, let's say, or Cebu or Bohol. So you can actually add different colors to your scale, to your levels, to make sure that you have a very good representation. Because sometimes oftentimes, this doesn't print well. So pagka-print, mugawas ra, yellow ra siya tanan. So ang mahitabo, murag na murag high salinity tanan. So you can actually add, uh, so in the middle, let's say, let's leave out yellow, then in the, let's give it orange, and okay. And so this would be a better representation of your salinity rather than just having the plain old yellow. There's a little bit of color theory in here because let's say, edit. So let's say I selected blue in the middle, and then red here. Okay. So while this would actually give you an idea of the higher or the value or the high values and uh, the low values, having colors that contrast one another, yung grabe ang contrast between them, like the red and the blue, would actually give you a rather misleading map or a misleading idea of the map because there's such a big contrast between them that it might assume people might assume na dire kay baba ra ang salinity nganong ni taas dire parang murag it's in terms of psychology, the contrasting colors, like, it gives you an idea na there's a jump in the value rather than there's a gradual change in the values. So because at oftentimes people don't really look at the color scale, they just fixate their eyes on the map itself here. And at parang hindsight na lang na, may scale. Okay, so that would mean na blah, blah, blah. So let's go back to yellow and orange. Yeah. Another thing here is you can actually change well, not really change, but adjust the values of your scale and your lines. So here we look at the fill, the colors. But here in level, it's going to give you the minimum and the maximum values that you can put into. So let's say, what is the maximum salinity of, well, actually, this is the maximum salinity. It's 4.2. but the minimum would be 0, right? For oceans. So 4.2 parts per million. Tama. So let's say there's a freshwater input. Ano siya? And you can change the intervals. And let's say I want to change the intervals into 1. So let's see if it's gonna make sense. So it's just gonna give you a very rough idea of tawag dito, of your map. So it doesn't really make sense to use only like 5 levels. You want to use at least 10 levels minimum, unless there's no choice. Pero so since this is the value is at for 0, the range is 0 to 4.2, let's go with 0.1. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See? So with more lines, the problem with having more lines is actually gubot siya. But you can actually make this a better representation of your maps because there are more lines, there are more values that would be taken into consideration uh, when making the map. Also, you can actually remove those lines by clicking line here and just selecting invisible and select OK. There. So it's gonna remove the black lines, but it's going to leave you with the gradient here of the colors. So this is what you commonly see in mga maps in certain publications. Wala siya grid lines and wala numbers. So you can actually remove the numbers also by going to edit level and selecting the label here. Wait, no, cancel. And just clicking no on the values that say yes. Up. Since we have a lot more levels, there's a lot more things to change. Ayun. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's a much cleaner map. But it all depends on what you want to represent in your in your paper or in your thesis or in your map. Yeah. And again, uniform. You can change the opacity. So, as long as you make it clean, it doesn't really matter. As long as you are able to give the idea of, the area. So as is, this map here doesn't really make much sense because it's just a bunch of scribbles, and we do know that it's from Aganan. Or if you collected your coordinates, you collected your data from a specific site, you know that it's from Aganan. But sometimes it's necessary to add some details into your map. So one example that I'll show you is to add the base map here. Okay. So clicking here on the new base map, and you just have to find the base map that you will use. So there are a lot of base maps available online. So I personally have the Siquijor, Negros Occidental, and Oriental, and even Dumaguete, the Dumaguete base maps. I sent you guys the Negros Oriental one, so you can practice and just open. Oh, wait lang. I forgot to do something pala. So, okay. So as you can see, this is the base map of Siquijor. So that's a base map. of Siquijor, of Negros Oriental. So it's basically divided into different barangays and municipalities. And so this is gonna serve as the background. So for the meantime, delete. I, I forgot that you should right click here on the map here. So in the object manager, you select the contour map, you right click, and you select add, and you select the base layer. Then you select your base map. Okay, open. So now it's going to ask you that your newly added base map exceeds the limits of your current map. So these are the coordinates. And do you want to adjust the map to include this layer? So you can, if you have a relatively smaller base map, you can actually click on yes. But since this is the base map of the entire Negros Oriental, this is what's going to happen. So yeah, the current map scale will result into an unviewable map. The scale was adjusted to keep the map at a reasonable size. So this small dot here, wait, and ayan. So that's actually the map that we have data on. Unfortunately, since the map is too big, right, so, eh, wala ako. I hate this mouse. So na yun, oh my god, I'm lost. Ayun. Sino ba itong nagpapakahirap? Ayan. Okay? So unfortunately, since the base map that we plugged in is very, very big, so it's going to give you a map like this. So this is not really viewable. And even if you export it into as a image, as a JPEG, so it's going to be very hard for you to decipher or for you to put your map into a Word file or even your publication. So Control Z. Ayan, okay. Ayan. So in this case, if what you could do is again you click on the object. So we want to add a base layer on our map here. Add base layer. Negros Oriental again, since that's the only map that we have. And it's going to ask you again if you want to extend. So since we tried extending it, but it didn't really go our way, so we just click no. And it's gonna give you the piece of landmass over here. And what you can do with that piece of landmass over there is actually to wait. So yeah, general field properties. So click on the plus, draw. So pattern, solid. Color, give me a color for a landmass.
Green.
Gren. Yan. Ayan. And click on the add text. So, agan, an. There. So now we have a contour map of the salinity near Aganan. So, that's it. Dali ra siya, di ba? Any questions? Like questions? Ay, anong nga to? Ay, oo. Okay, let's try that again. Ayun. So now I added a post map. So this is yung new post map. So I get right click, add, and here you can select the post. Okay. So what does the post say? The post actually tells us where the coordinates were taken for when you actually did the sample. So yung coordinates nyo, katong latitude and longitude would represent this cross here. So as you can see, this is somewhat a grid pattern. So there's a line, there's a pattern here. So there are stations where the coordinates were taken. Diba? So there's a pattern. Unfortunately, the one who probably did the map was a little drunk. So dili siya ingana straight. But that is to be expected. So actually, when we do field work when we do mapping during field work, sometimes this won't be followed like this. One of the stations would be probably skewed somewhere to the nearer to another rather than to have to be equally distant and so on. Okay. So now you might be wondering if why do uh, why does the value here on this side here why is there a value or why is there a color for the values here while it's clearly on the landmass, diba? So you can actually see one of the coordinates are on the landmass. Okay? And eto, one coordinate is actually beside the edge of the map and another one is here and another one is right over here. Can anybody take a stab in the dark kung anong nai if nai landmass dere nganong moabot gihapon ang color or ang range ng contour maps beyond the landmass?
Estimates?
Very good, actually. So there are actually two reasons, and the number one reason, or the best, actually siya reason, excuse, the best excuse that we came up with, was actually that Surfer itself, again, wait, let me turn this off, and base map. So again, these are the coordinates, diba? So as you can see, despite having no coordinates here in the middle of this four, again, mouse, of these four, there's actually a value present here. Despite, again, na there are no coordinates, di ka nakamark og waypoint, dere, nagyapon siya value. The thing with Surfer is it actually extrapolates your data. It's going to give you the best estimate of your values in between your coordinates. Okay, so that's the reason why sometimes it would overextend itself, especially in this case, the contour map. It would overextend itself beyond the landmass or beyond the area that you actually took coordinates of. So in this case, na values gihapon kahit naa ka sa land naa ka sa landmass and na coordinates. The second reason is actually that majority of the GPS says that we use are not that accurate. Remember that in the lab we actually have the older model GPS units which are accurate to minimum. The best accuracy that I've gotten from those GPS units were actually 5 meters. But on a very cloudy day, swerte na ka if moabot pa siya 10 meters. So, there's bound to be some adjustments here na instead na unta that this is slightly moved to the right. So, you can see na kani dapat na adere na move siya to the right, and also this part here, na there's some error in the GPS unit and the coordinate system that was used. That's why nilapaw siya. So it went beyond the what's the name? Went beyond the map or the coordinates that you actually set in. So overlap siya with the landmass. Okay. So next would be to, now that you've gotten your map, what do you do with it next? Actually, you just save it. Wait, nasa export file pala. So file, export, and you select the file format that you want. If you just want it to be JPEG, there, you can select JPEG. Then put in salinity and select save. And it's going to ask you for the document size, the pixel. Personally, I like it 300 pixels per inch. I like it to be a little bit more high res. Kay mas dali i-reduce ang quality sa image rather than to have it to be reduce rather than to enlarge it later sa Word, let's say, or sa PowerPoint nimo. So better to have the file or image size in that's high res sort of, rather than have it in a low res file, then i-enlarge nimo siya sa Word, mag-pixelate ra siya, and you select okay, then you're done with it. Asa to na save, right? Okay. Yan. So that's your map. Any questions, comments, violent reactions?